Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're unpacking something absolutely wild. A truly bizarre meteorological event where a tropical storm did the exact opposite of what you'd logically expect it to do. You know, when we hear that a named storm is barreling toward the Gulf Coast, our minds immediately go straight to torrential downpours, widespread flooding, and howling winds. But nature loves to throw us a curveball. What actually happens when a tropical system arrives, and instead of bringing a deluge, it acts like this massive atmospheric magnifying glass, just cranking the thermostat to a dangerous extreme? Let's dive right into this anomaly, because what Tropical Storm Bertha did to the Texas coast is a really fascinating lesson in extreme weather mechanics.
Seriously, I want you to think about this mind-bending paradox for a second. How in the world does a tropical storm create a 115-degree Fahrenheit heat dome? Usually, we associate Gulf Coast storms with these dark, thick clouds completely blocking out the sun, right? And cooling rains that bring a temporary, even if it's super messy, relief from that intense summer swelter. But this specific system, it completely rewrote the rules for the Houston area. It's almost comical how entirely backward the reality on the ground turned out to be.
The contrast is just stark. Normally, we brace for heavy rain, severe flooding, and thick, sun-blocking clouds. But the actual impacts that hit the Houston area were wildly different. We are talking about a dangerously high 115-degree heat index, absolutely clear blue skies, and an extreme heat warning. Literally, instead of a washout, the region faced dangerously hot conditions. So to understand how we ended up baking instead of soaking, we really have to trace this storm back to its very beginning. Section 1. Tracking Bertha, Louisiana to Texas. Let's rewind the clock. Bertha made landfall on a Wednesday afternoon over in St Bernard Parish, Louisiana, packing maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour. From there, it started tracking westward at a pretty steady 14 miles per hour right across the Gulf Coast. Fast forward to Thursday night, and the National Hurricane Center noted that Bertha was located just 40 miles west-northwest of Houston, Texas. But here's the catch. It was no longer a well-defined circulation. It had opened up and degenerated into a trough. By the time the system finally reached the Houston area, a key metric had shifted significantly. The minimum central pressure had risen to 1,008 millibars, and its maximum sustained winds had dropped off to just 35 miles per hour. Basically, in meteorological terms, the engine of the storm was sputtering out. It had lost its organization and its punch as a major wind threat. But, as you'll see, it was what was happening way up high above the surface that created our weather paradox.
Section 2. The science of the anomaly.
The real culprit behind this bizarre event? Wind shear. By definition, wind shear is the variation in wind velocity or direction over a short distance. Basically, strong upper-level winds were slicing straight across the top of Bertha from the north to the south. Think of a spinning top, right? And imagine someone just comes along and aggressively swipes the top half of it right off. That is exactly what the shear did to Bertha. It physically decapitated the storm. And because it was pulling all this dry air in from the mainland, it completely stripped the northern side of the storm, the side sitting directly over Houston, of all its moisture and cloud cover. A local meteorologist from KHOU 11 hit the nail on the head, perfectly capturing the violence of this atmospheric process. They noted, and I quote, "There's the shear cutting across the storm and just blowing and ripping the storm apart as it blows the clouds off to the west-southwest. That sheer force literally shoved the thunderstorms, the rain, and all those thick clouds far to the south and west. What that left behind was a dry, cloudless, gaping void over the Houston metropolitan area. And let me tell you, when you have absolutely no clouds in the middle of a Texas summer, the sun does its absolute worst."
Section 3. The Texas Heat Dome.
This is exactly what an extreme heat warning actually looks like when you're living through it. We had the approach of this tropical system pushing atmospheric humidity way up, but because of the wind shear we just talked about, it was all happening under an absolutely cloudless, baking sky. All those ingredients came together perfectly to create a really dangerous heat dome. Just listen to these expected heat index numbers, which is what it actually feels like on your skin. In El Campo, it hit 113 degrees. Waller felt like 115. Conroe bigged at 116, and Anahuac topped the charts with a completely suffocating 117-degree heat index. People were literally bracing for floods, and instead they got life-threatening heat.
Section 4. Bertha's final act.
But wait, this wasn't the end of the story. While Houston was baking under that clear sky, all that moisture that was violently ripped away by the wind shear didn't just vanish into thin air. It had to go somewhere, right? And it brought very real threats to other parts of the Texas coast.
The displaced moisture was shoved far to the south, where it proceeded to dump 1 to 3 inches of rain, with some isolated pockets seeing up to 4 inches over South Texas. So wrap your head around this. The exact same storm that totally dried out Houston was simultaneously drenching areas further down the coastline.
The dual nature of this storm was honestly staggering. Overnight, isolated flash flooding became a major threat, especially in urban areas. Regions stretching all the way from Corpus Christi down to Brownsville faced the very real risk of sudden urban flooding, not to mention life-threatening surf and rip currents along the beaches. It is such a stunning contrast. You had dangerous triple-digit heat just a few hours north and torrential rain and flooding hazards to the south, all from the exact same deteriorating storm system.
Section 5. Trusting live updates with Londoner News.
You know, when weather behaves this unpredictably, when a rainstorm turns into a massive heat wave for one city and a dangerous flood for another, the information you consume can literally be a matter of life and death. In an era where news stories develop incredibly fast and social media is just totally flooded with unverified videos that can easily cause unnecessary panic, the Londoner News editorial standards act as your anchor. They are completely dedicated to accuracy based on reliable information, verifying facts with official government and emergency service statements. They're totally independent from commercial pressures. And, perhaps most importantly during a fast-moving storm, they update promptly as new facts develop, without ever misrepresenting the situation or creating false certainty. They just tell you what is happening, why it's happening, and when things change.
So, it is absolutely crucial to know where to find the facts when the skies turn strange. For live, completely verified updates on unpredictable events, exactly like this one, you should visit londoner.news, or specifically londoner.news/tropical storm Bertha hurricane. And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We often prepare for the disasters we expect, right? Buying sandbags for rain or boarding up windows for wind. But when the atmosphere decides to just write its own rules and a tropical storm brings a 117-degree heat dome, how will you prepare for the anomaly? Understanding the science is your first step. Keep learning, stay curious, and always seek out the facts.